अष्टमोऽध्यायः। अक्षरब्रह्मयोगः। अर्जुन उवाच किं तद्ब्रह्म किमध्यात्मं किं कर्म पुरुषोत्तम अधिभूतं च किं प्रोक्तम् अधिदैवं किमुच्यते अधियज्ञः कथं गोत्र देहेऽस्मिन् मधुसूदन प्रयाणकाले च कथं ज्ञेयोऽसि नियतात्मभिः। श्रीभगवानुवाच अक्षरं ब्रह्म परमं स्वभावोऽध्यात्म उच्यते भूतभावोद्भवकरो विसर्गः कर्म संज्ञितः अधिभूतं क्षरो भावः पुरुषश्चाधिदैवतम् अधियज्ञोऽहमेवात्र देहे देहभृतां वर अन्तकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरम् यः प्रयाति समद्भावं याति नास्त्यत्र संशयः यं यं वापि स्मरन् भावं त्यजत्यन्ते कलेवरम् तं तमेवैति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मरयुध्य च मय्यर्पितमनो बुद्धिर्मामे वैश्यस्य संशयः अभ्यासयोगयुक्तेन चेतसा नान्यगामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन् कविं पुराणम् अनुशासितारम् अणोरणीयां समनुस्मरेद्यः सर्वस्य धातारमचिन्त्य रूपम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसः परस्तात् प्रयाणकाले मनसाचलेन भक्त्या युक्तो योगबलेन चैव भ्रुवोर्मध्ये प्राणमावेश्य सम्यक् सतं परं पुरुषमुपैति दिव्यम् यदक्षरं वेदविदो वदन्ति विशन्ति यद्यतयो वीतरागाः यदिच्छन्तो ब्रह्मचर्यं चरन्ति तत्ते पदं सङ्ग्रहेण प्रवक्ष्ये सर्वद्वाराणि संयम्य मनोहृदि निरुध्य च मूर्ध्याधायात्मनः प्राणमास्थितो योगधारणाम् ओमित्येकाक्षरं ब्रह्म व्याहरान् मामनुस्मरन् यः प्रयाति त्यजन् देहं स याति परमां गतिम् अनन्यचेताः सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः मामुपेत्य पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयमशाश्वतम् नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गताः आब्रह्मभुवनान् लोकाः पुनरावर्तिनोऽर्जुन मामुपेत्य तु कौन्तेय पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते सहस्रयुगपर्यन्तं महर्यद्ब्रह्मणो विदुः रात्रिं युगसहस्रान्तां तेहोरात्रविदो जनाः अव्यक्ताद्व्यक्तयः सर्वाः प्रभवन्त्यः रागमे रात्र्यागमे प्रधीयन्ते तत्रैवाव्यक्तसंज्ञके भूतग्रामः स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यः रागमे परस्तस्मात्तु भावोऽन्यो व्यक्तो व्यक्तात् सनातनः यः स सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तमाहुः परमां गतिम् यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम पुरुषः स परः पार्थ भक्त्या लभ्यस्त्वनन्यया यस्यान्तःस्थानि भूतानि येन सर्वमिदं ततम् यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम् आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः प्रयाता यान्ति तं कालं वक्ष्यामि भरतर्षभ अग्निर्ज्योतिरः शुक्लः षण्मासा उत्तरायणम् तत्र प्रयाता गच्छन्ति ब्रह्मविदो जनाः धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिर्योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते शुक्लकृष्णे गतीह्येते जगतः शाश्वते मते एकया यात्यनावृत्तिम् अन्यया वर्तते पुनः नैते श्रुति पार्थ जानन् योगी मुह्यति कश्चन तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु योगयुक्तो भवार्जुन वेदेषु यज्ञेषु तपःसु चैव दानेषु यत्पुण्यफलं प्रदिष्टम् अत्येति तत्सर्वमिदं विदित्वा योगी परं स्थानमुपैति चाद्यम् ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे अक्षरब्रह्मयोगो नाम अष्टमोऽध्यायः।
Hare Krishna, I welcome you all for today's evening discussion on the 10th session of this course on life lessons from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, entitled Attaining the Supreme, also known as the More Confidential Knowledge. So previous chapter was confidential knowledge, because Krishna reveals knowledge about himself, knowledge of the Absolute. So in this chapter, he is going to tell us how to attain his abode. Before, I request all the participants kindly put your proper names, so to avoid any unscrupulous entries. So kindly cooperate, put your proper names, and we'll do the invocation prayers now. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakthurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupata Padamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapatakamadam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Satrijatam Sagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Shavadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Dalita Shri Vishakan Pitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Shrute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So every time I do this chapter, I tell a story from the Padma Purana, Gita Mahatmya, where Lord Shiva is glorifying the importance of each of these chapters. There he is telling Mother Parvati about the story of a husband and wife. Can just confirm to me whether you are able to see my slides?
Yes, Prabhu, we are able to see you.
So one husband and wife, they were enjoying life in their own way. and eventually when they died, they became ghosts. So this illustrates that if you don't pursue the goal of human life, we misuse it. So that is the consequence. So while they were roaming together as a ghost, they came and under a tree, and in that tree also there were many ghosts around. So the wife asked the husband that what is the way that we can get deliverance from this ghostly existence? Then the husband said that I have heard that one who inquires about Brahman, about Adhyatma, and about karma, he can get deliverance from this miserable existence. So then she asked him as a question, Kim tad Brahma, Kim Adhyatma, Kim Karma, Purushottama. Kim tad Brahma means what is Brahman? Kim Adhyatma means what is Adhyatma? Kim Karma, what is Karma? Purushottama, here Purushottama she referred to her husband. The moment she recited these words, they got deliverance from the ghostly body, and the tree under which they were sitting also got deliverance, and all the ghosts around that place. So they're surprised. So what is this? So unknowingly, they had recited the first verse of this 8th chapter. So if a person unknowingly recites half a verse of one chapter, so they can get this much benefit than what to speak about reciting the entire Bhagavad Gita. So this chapter is also important very much because it talks about attaining the Supreme. How can we go about attaining the Supreme Lord? Because we are part and parcel of God. We are nature one with the Lord, although we are subordinate to the Lord. So if we can attain the Lord, that will be the most perfect situation. So it is said that every moment we are getting so many, our mind is flooded with so many thoughts. And the fact is that actually all our thoughts are one by one getting fulfilled. But we don't see that. We think that I have so many desires, why Lord is not fulfilling it. And sometimes it seems that He's fulfilling it when we don't want it. Just like a child is there, it keeps on asking the parents so many things one after another. But then father or parents, they really try to figure out what is it actually he wants. Because he will not be satisfied if the parents fulfill all that he wants, still that fellow child will not be satisfied. But if they can find out what is his most important desire, and if they fulfill that one, then he will be relatively peaceful. So similarly, God is trying to fulfill our every desire, because God is also trying to fulfill His own desires, and we being similar to Him, we also have many desires, and Lord is trying to fulfill them. But since we have so many desires, He gives priority to the one which is most highest in our thought. So that we ourselves don't know sometimes. Just like the child himself doesn't know what he wants. He keeps on telling, I want this, I want this. Somehow the parent is able to understand what exactly he wants. And then when the parent gives it, then he is at least for that moment very peaceful. So similarly, at the time of death, so many thoughts come in the mind at one moment itself. In a very few moments, so many thoughts based on our past experiences are flooding the mind, because all the other senses become inert. So at that time, what is the most important thought prevailing at that moment? That immediately the Lord fulfills. So that's why it is very important what we do during our life. That is art of living. They say art of living is also art of dying. So Lord Krishna is answering Arjuna's question at the end of the previous chapter, when Krishna briefly mentioned about Brahman, Adhyatma, Adideva, Adibhuta, Adi Yajna, like that. These topics he mentioned. How he is the controller of all the elements, how he is the controller of all the demigods, how he is the origin of all sacrifices. Then in response to that, Arjuna is asking Krishna as questions. So in this chapter, Lord Krishna is going to answer those questions. And Arjuna is basically asking about Brahma, Kim Tad Brahma, Kim Adhyatma, what Kim Karma, Adibhutam, Kim Protam, Adi Devam, Kim Uchyate, Adi Yajna, and Prayanakala. Prayanakala means at the time of death, what should one remember? Krishna answers all of them and elaborates the last topic in the rest of this chapter. The initial part of the chapter, he answers these first 7 questions, and the last question he elaborates in the remaining of the chapter, because that is the most important subject. Now, so from 1st to 4th verse, then 5th chapter, Krishna, 5th verse onwards, he is telling about how to remember Krishna. So first of all, you have to remember something, you should know about it and understand it. Then it becomes easy to remember. So whatever one remembers at the time of death, as I said, every moment we are thinking about something, but which is the most important thought that is determining our change of subtle body and our gross body. Actually, a man is the architect of his own destiny. Lord doesn't, sometimes people put the blame on destiny, but actually destiny is made by ourselves. And if you have to change that, again, that depends on us. God is willing to help us. So whatever one remembers at the time of death, actually every moment our body is dying because it is changing. That is also considered as death. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yata. Dehantar prapti dhira tatra muhiti. So one who is sober, he is not bewildered by this change. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantar prapti dhira tatra muhiti. So one who understands this change of the bodies, what is creating this change, he is not bewildered even at the time of death. He attains that destination depending on what, in other words, where we are going. Supposing I decided to go to some place, because I decided only I am going there. It's not that someone forcefully is dragging me there. Of course, that can happen. But mostly, we are deciding where we want to go. So one should practice remembering Krishna throughout life, and while leaving body and while leaving the body. Whatever you do, practice remembering during the course of life, that will determine your thought. Just like if you are prepared for an exam, that will prevail at the time of the examination. Sometimes people say that I went to the examination hall and I forgot everything. That happens because they're doing last minute preparation. Or sometimes it may be useful also, last minute preparation, make them remember at the time of writing. But nevertheless, whatever you practice, that will determine what you will remember at the time of death and help him attain easily that after death. So then Krishna is talking about people who try to remember Krishna by Yoga Mishra Bhakti, which means they have desires to attain some mystic powers. And along with that, they do Bhakti. Bhakti they are doing, but with some desire. So they may not go to Krishna's abode. Instead, they may either get liberation or they may again be born in this world. So there are different ways of remembering Krishna. That is, if you know about somebody, what do we recognize Krishna for? We remember Krishna as Kavim. Kavim means he knows past, present, and future. Purana means as the oldest. And then Krishna talks about the process and results of Sat Chakra Yoga. Sat Chakra means 6 chakras. There are 6 chakras in our body. The world is designed such a way that the smallest is connected to the largest. So this smallest, in our body, there's different 6 energy centers or 7. So starting from the base of the spine, then you have in the navel region, then in the lower, below the lungs, then in the heart, then in the throat, then in the forehead and top of the skull. So like this, these are related to earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So also they are related to the Bhur, Bhuvar, Swar, the 7 planetary systems. So like that, from the smallest, there's a connection with the largest. So the remembering Krishna is possible by pure bhakti. The other person is remembering Krishna for some other purpose. But if you remember Krishna through pure bhakti, one can attain Krishna's abode easily. That's Krishna again emphasizing Kevala Bhakti. Such devotees, there is no rebirth which is there in all planets. So if you, along with bhakti, if you do some other processes, then you end up in these other planets, where again you may have to take birth, come down from that planets. But if you remember Krishna at the time of death, then you will attain Krishna's abode. So why is it that we will see? Then Krishna tries to distinguish between what is the material world and spiritual world. The material world and the conditioned living entities manifest at the beginning of Brahma's day and unmanifest at the night falls. In other words, our existence in this world is relative. Relative means we are dependent on other living entities for our birth and death. Similarly, all these living entities, their lifespan is connected to the lifespan of the Brahma, whose lifespan is also very limited. So when he takes birth and when he dies, depending on that, the living entities get their bodies and lose their bodies. So this is a relative word. So no matter how much independent we want to be, we are always dependent on someone superior and someone inferior is depending on us. One attains Krishna's abode, the eternal and indestructible spiritual world, by Ananya Bhakti. Because when you do pure devotion, Krishna is attracted by that. So he takes full responsibility for our future and present. And then we never return to this world. So when Krishna sees that we are eager to go to him, till that time he will not interfere. If you want to go to some other planet, he will allow that. But if our intense desire is to go back to the spiritual world, then Krishna facilitates that. So then the supremacy of pure bhakti in attaining Krishna is explained. A yogi or jnani who leaves body by the path of light attains liberation. A karmi who leaves body by the path of darkness returns back to this world. So depending on whether you are doing karma yoga, jnana yoga, or ashtanga yoga, you get different destinations. If you do karma yoga, you may go at the most to the higher planets, but again you have to take birth. Because see, some aircraft is there. As long as the fuel is there, it can be airborne. But once the fuel is getting exhausted, it has come back down. Similarly, these karma yogis, as long as they have pious credits, they can go to higher planets. And once it's exhausted, they have to come back. Then the other is the jnana yogi. He can get free from this, just like some satellites are there. They can go out of the Earth orbit. So like that, these jnanis, they are able to go beyond this universe, 14 planetary systems. And then there is the Ashtanga yogi who gets mystic powers. You can go from one planet to another. But they are dependent on the circumstances. Depending on, that's why we see so many people are writing an exam. Some are successful, some are failing. Although all of them put the same, maybe few people did the same effort, but they're getting different results. Which means that who gets what result is also determined by some superior living entities. So a devotee of Krishna, Bhakta Yogi, attains Krishna's supreme abode and never returns back because he is fully satisfied. So another reason why we keep taking birth again and again is we are not satisfied at the end of life. If you go to any dying man and ask him, are you satisfied? Superficially he may say yes, but we know for sure that there are some unfulfilled desires. So therefore, we keep repeating this birth. But one who becomes a devotee of Krishna is fully satisfied, and therefore he never takes birth again. So in the previous chapter, Krishna mentioned several items starting with Brahman. Brahman means eternity, future. Or it can also refer to the living entity because he is eternal. And in this chapter, Arjuna inquires about them. And Lord Krishna answers 7 of them in the first, third, and fourth verse. And the last question, that is, what should one remember at the time of death, is answered in the rest of this chapter. So Krishna also speaks about Kevala Bhakti. And Kevala Bhakti means pure devotion. And Yoga Mishra Bhakti means Bhakti which is mixed with desire for perfection, other perfection. And describes the 2 destinations of the yogis. Among the yogis also, there are 2 destinations. Just like if you write a competitive exam, obviously some will be successful, some have to drop out. So same the case with this yoga process. Now, here we see a tabular form. What were Arjuna's questions and what are Krishna's answers? First question is Kim Tad Brahma? What is Brahma? The Brahma refers to the living entity of Jiva, the indestructible Akharam. Akharam, as we saw in the second chapter, the soul is indestructible and is the transcendental living entity. He is beyond the three modes. The Prakriti, there are two types of Prakriti, Para Prakriti, Apara Prakriti. Apara means this material world, and Para Prakriti means the living entity because he is conscious and which is separate from the material body or the Apara Prakriti. Then Kim Adhyatmam. What is Adhyatma? What is self-realization? Who can say that I am self-realized? The Swabhava, one who has realized the Swabhava or original nature. That eternal nature or the impressions that accompany the Jiva and govern the body. Based on my ego, the body is generated. If I am having an ego of a dog, then I get a dog's body. If I have the ego of an Indra or Brahma, I get Indra or Brahma's body. So like that, my impressions which I carry with me through the subtle body, that reflects in my gross body. Then what is karma? Kim karma? What is fruitive activity? Why am I doing some activity? Why I am getting certain results? Why I am not getting certain results? All these are explained as the fruitive activities of the Jiva that lead to transmigration from one material body to another. Constantly, my subtle body, my gross body is changing. This is a fact of life. So why is it changing? Because of my activities. I do some activity and that produce some results, and the results I try to enjoy or I may suffer, and then that creates further desires, and like this it continues because we are ignorant of the goal of life. Then next question was, what is Adibhuta? Who is controlling these five material elements? Prakriti, about Adibhuta means the agglomeration of all the material elements of Prakriti. The constantly changing Chara. Akshara means living entity, infallible. Chara means which is constantly changing. Physical world or material body consisting of the material elements. Material elements, 24 elements are there: earth, water, fire, air, ether. The five senses, five knowledge acquiring working senses, five sense objects, three modes of material nature, mind, intelligence, ego. All these are the constitute the Adibhutas. Then Adi Deva, who are controlling, who are the different controllers in this world and who is ultimately controlling them, or the Virat Purusha. Virat Purusha means material, universal, cosmic form, it is said. The gigantic universal form, which includes all the demigods and their planets. When in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita we see, Krishna is showing his Vishwarupa, where he is showing him that all the planetary systems, all the demigods are residing in him. In other words, this whole entire world is maintained by this arrangement or Adi Deva, control mechanism. Next is, what is Adi Yajna, or whom are we trying to satisfy? We are trying to satisfy so many people, but nothing works the way we want. But definitely there is someone who is being satisfied, and that's why he is enabling us to change these bodies. So that is the Paramatma, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, the Supreme Lord represented as the Super Soul. Whether we satisfy someone or not satisfy, only person who can be satisfied is the Super Soul, Paramatma, and he is enabling us to achieve certain things. Although we think we did something or someone helped me, but ultimately it's only the Paramatma who is witnessing and sanctioning the activities and the results. Next is, how is Adi Yajna known in the body? Okay, if there's a Paramatma in my body, how do I realize him factually? In the heart of every embodied being. So he is residing in our consciousness. And as the regulator, I inspire performance of sacrifice and other acts. We'll see in the later chapter also, 15th chapter, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto. I reside in the heart of all living entities. Some people may say some animals don't have heart. So how do you say he's residing in the heart? So here heart means the consciousness. The consciousness has no time or place dimensions. So I am in the heart of every embodied being. Oh, Mattas, Aham Sarvas, no, sorry. Uh, that is, from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So, next is how to know Krishna at the point of death. Prayana Kali. Prayana means where we are forced to change our body. Prayana means leaving some place. So, when we are leaving the body, how can we remember Krishna? So, this is the main subject of the rest of this chapter. So, by service to Krishna, one attains the real meaning of these words. So, although theoretically we can explain all these subjects, but unless you practice in a certain way, you cannot realize it. Jnana and Vijnana. Jnana means theoretical knowledge, Vijnana means realized knowledge, where you start getting the results. Supposing you're an engineer, you have studied engineering, but unless you put that into practice, you won't really get the benefit out of it, or others will not benefit from it. Similarly, when we start acting according to Krishna's instruction, then one attains the real meaning of these words and understands that Brahma or the living entity and Adi Yajna, the Lord, who is to be satisfied, are worthy of realizing. Ultimately, we may say, I have so many relatives, friends, and society, but when we are born and dying, only the super soul is accompanying us. And therefore, this is the most important thing. And other items, among these 7 topics, these 2 are very important. That is knowing about ourselves and knowing about the super souls. And the other items like this karma, impressions, uh, gross body, and universal form are, are worthy of rejection, which means they are not so important. You may know them, but ultimately they will not help you much. So now Krishna answers the last question, that is of Arjuna, about remembering him at the time of quitting the material body. Now someone may ask, is it really so important? As you say, because the whole world is not at all concerned about this question. So why is it so important? Yeah, Antakale cha mam eva. Antakale means at the end of his life. Cha mam eva means Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. Smaran means remembering. Muktva means leaves, quits. Kalevaram means change of body. Mameva means me alone. Yah prayati samad bhavam. Prayati means attains at once. Mad bhavam, I nature. What is Krishna's nature? Satchidananda Vigraha. And yati, nasti, atra, na samshaya. Of this there is no doubt. Whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature, the supreme destination. Of this there is no doubt. So he's saying whoever, which means it is open to all. The only requirement is at the end of his life, one should quit his body. We should be willing to leave the body also. And in what condition? Remembering me alone. Nobody cannot, don't have much choices. And at once attains it. He says immediately you get the results at once. It's not that after some time, maybe after some few lifetimes. No. Of this, there's no doubt. Krishna is giving this guarantee. Just as by remembering Krishna, one attains Krishna uh, by remembering something else, one attains that object. So you have only 2 choices at the time of death: either remember Krishna or remember something else. Then now, what is the general law of destination after death that Krishna is explaining? So, in other words, he's saying the positive injunction and the negative injunction. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Yam yam means whatever, because our tendency is to give many options. So Krishna is saying whatever it may be. Smaran bhavam, one remembers. Bhavam means what is the most predominant thought. So you may say, I remember so many things. No, what is the most important thought is on your mind that we ourselves cannot say. Just like if you go to some expert doctors are there, they charge you very high fees. But how they solve the problem is first by interrogating the patient. Normally, the patient goes with a confused mind to the doctor, and doctor also sometimes is confused, and he confuses back the patient, and this is how the treatment goes. But if you see the most qualified doctors, they first talk with the patient and try to understand, first of all, what is the most important thing. Because unless I tell the person what is my problem, there's no solution. Frankly speaking, we think the doctor, a lawyer, or the spiritual master can solve my problems. But the whole thing is that we are not able to express our problem, just like Arjuna himself was struggling to express his problem. So similarly, this is most important way to solve a person's problem is first make him explain. You have to talk in such a way that that person comes out with the problem himself. God help those who help themselves. The best way we can help someone is make him understand, first of all, what is his problem. So we have to ask the coach. Coaching techniques are such that the most proficient coach is making the coachee first explain, understand what is his own problem. So therefore, Krishna says, Tyajati ante kalevaram. Tyajati means leaving. Ante, kalevaram means leaving the body. At the time of leaving the body, whatever one remembers, tam tam, that what, yam yam, tam tam means whatever. Either you remember Krishna or you remember something else. That he will attain. Tam tam ka, evaiti. Evaiti means that alone. Sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Sada means constantly. Tad bhava means constant thought. Bhavitaha, a state similar to that object of constant thought. Whatever one remembers when leaving the body, O son of Kunti, he will surely attain. Krishna is giving that guarantee. Nobody can give this guarantee. If you remember this, you get that. If you remember something else, you get that. Although we may not recognize that, but this is the fact that is happening. Sometimes we say a sudden accident happened. Nothing is accident. If you carefully analyze, everything is going as a perfect an order only. Whatever one remembers when leaving the body, O son of Kunti, he will surely attain a state similar to that object of constant thought. Here it says similar to that object. Since person's thoughts are the cause of thoughts at death, one should, since previous thoughts, practice abhyasa, remembering Krishna throughout life while doing his duties. So two important instructions are here. While doing your duties, duty means it's not optional. Duty means what we have to do. That is prescription. That has to be prescribed duty. If you do those duties, then what we should do along with that? Remembering Krishna throughout life. Throughout life, we have to keep on doing our prescribed duties. And simultaneously, we have to remember Krishna. Then remembering Krishna at the time of death is possible. So this requires practice, abhyasa, which also Krishna emphasized in the 6th chapter. Abhyasena to Vairagyena. Vairagya means remembering Krishna. People think Vairagya means detachment, but detachment is not possible without remembering Krishna. Abhyasa. Abhyasa means doing your duties. By doing Abhyasena to Vairagyena. Abhyasa means you practice remembering Krishna and doing the duties. This thing, what does thinking Krishna always mean? Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. Sarveshu kaleshu means all times, at all times. Tasmat, therefore, Mam anusmara yujyasa yudhyacha. Mam anusmara means think of me. Yudhyacha means prescribed duty of fighting. Of course, we are also fighting. We are not daily going in the war field and fighting, but we are also struggling in our day-to-day life. That is recommended by Krishna. He is not telling us to run away from the duty as long as it is prescribed duty. Then, Maya arpita mano buddhir. By offering your mano buddhi, mind and intelligence, because the mind and intelligence is the sitting place of this lust. When we offer that to Krishna, then it becomes purified. Maya arpita mano buddhi. By offering your mind and intelligence unto me, in other words, dedicating them with your activities dedicated to me, use it. He has given it, use it in the best possible way. Mam e vaishyasi asamshaya. Asamshaya means without doubt. Mam means me. E vaishyasi means will attain. Therefore, at all times, you should think of me and do your prescribed duty of fighting. By offering your mind and intelligence unto me with your activities dedicated to me, you will attain me without doubt. Next, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. Abhyasa means practice. Yoga yuktena means to meditate. Abhyasa yoga yuktena. How do you attain Krishna? By remembering him is being explained here. Chetasa Nanya Gamina. Chetasa means uh, mind and consciousness. Na Anya, undeviated. Gamina means consciousness. Then Paramam Purusham Divyam. Paramam means supreme. Purusham means person. Divyam means transcendental. Then Yati. Yati means attains. Partha, O son of Kunti, Partha. Uh, Anuchintayam. By constant thinking of me. So, he who practices to meditate with undeviated mind and consciousness upon me, the supreme transcendental person, attains me by such constant thinking of me. Just like the caterpillar is always meditating on flying like a butterfly, and in the same lifetime it becomes a butterfly. Initially, it has no wings, but it develops the wings because of constant meditation. There is some insect. The insect gets trapped in by another insect, predator. So it's always thinking when the predator is going to come and kill me. While thinking like that, it attains a body like that predator. So Krishna will now tell Arjuna how different ways of remembering him. So one may ask, okay, is it stereotyped way of remembering Krishna? All of us have to do the same thing. Remembering Krishna by Yoga Mishra Bhakti. What is that? Ways of remembering Krishna? Because someone may say, I cannot do pure devotion. So then what we can do? You remember Krishna as Kavim or omniscient, the knower of past, present, and future. If you read about the stories of Krishna, we can understand that he knows past, present, and future. And Puranam, the beginning or the oldest, Anushasitaram, the controller of everything. Ano Aniyamsham, smaller than the smallest. When the atom, so much we are investing on the atomic energy, but they are trying to find what is the God particle. But he is saying Anushasitaram, the controller of everything. Anoraniyamsham. Sarvasya Dhatharam. Dhatharam means maintainer. Sarvasya means of everything. Achintya. How is he able to do? Because of his Achintya, inconceivable energies. Rupam, Achintya Rupam, with a beautiful personal form. This beauty cannot be described. How he is able to have so many qualities and activities. Aditya Varnam. Aditya means sun. Just like the sun is luminous and self-revealing. In his presence, there's nothing further to be known. Just like when the sun comes, there's no need for other lights. But no matter how many lights you put, it cannot equal the sunlight. So tamasah parastha. Tamasah means ignorance. Parastha means transcendental to the material nature, full of ignorance. So then Krishna is talking about Sat Chakra Yoga. So one may ask, what do I have to in relation to this world or to the universal form? So that correlation Krishna is going to explain in the 10th verse through Sat Chakra Yoga. One who at the time of death fixes his life hair, prana, between the eyebrows, Ajna Chakra. There are different chakras, starting from the Moladhara Chakra to the Sahasra Chakra. That is the base of the spine. These energy centers through which the pranas or life hairs are floating. So if they are in proper order, then all the parts in our body and mind will be in harmony with the world around us. And then it becomes easy for a person to leave this body and attain the desired destination. So this is possible through yoga practice. With an undeviating mind, remembers the Supreme Lord with the qualities mentioned in the previous verse. If you meditate on these qualities of the Lord, then one is able to move this life hair, pranas, which are keeping the soul in this body. The same pranas will help the soul to leave this body peacefully. But devotion will in full devotion will attain him. Now Arjuna didn't understand the method of fixing the prana in the Ajna Chakra. So basically, Arjuna thinks that this is not practical for him. So who's going to sit and do this Satchakra yoga? Just like if you give a person one particular option, he may still consider it and come back and say, no, it's not practical for me. So like this, Arjuna thinks this Satchakra yoga, although it helps us to reach the Supreme Lord, he cannot do Satchakra yoga on the battlefield of Kurukshetra now. This is too late for this. So Arjuna didn't understand the method of fixing the prana in the Agna Chakra, a part of the Satchakra yoga practice. So Krishna will now explain the process of performing and the goal achieved by it. So first Krishna will explain what is the result one can attain through the Satchakra yoga, and then Arjuna will say it is not practical for me, and then Krishna will explain how it is much better result can be obtained through Bhakti yoga. Because every time someone says something, people come with alternative options. Why not? They will ask. So same thing is possible when Krishna is explaining about himself or the process of devotion. People will invariably come up with some other options, and Krishna has to convince them. So what are the requirements of the Satchakra yoga? One has to practice renunciation, have no attachments with Vitaraga. So that is also not possible. He has to practice celibacy, brahmacharya. Celibacy means you should not think about anything else other than Brahman, spirit, soul. The knowledge of the Vedas, Veda Vidaha, you should have studied all the Vedas, and you should be uttering Omkara, Om. For that, he has to do a lot of practice. So if these four conditions satisfied, then he will be successful in the Satchakra yoga process. Which means it was possible in some age for some people, but it is going to be very difficult now. And what will be the result of Satchakra yoga? Krishna is explaining the process and its result. Then Krishna will explain that what is the alternative process and what is the alternative result. So the result of Satchakra yoga is liberation or entrance into Brahman. At the most, what you can get this Satchakra yoga is you will realize that you are the spirit soul and not the body. That much only. That is liberation and entrance into Brahman. Then what is the process of Satchakra yoga? You have to close all the doors of the senses. The senses are attached to the sense objects. Like your sense of seeing is attached to the eye, sense of hearing is attached to the ear, sense of smell is attached to the nose. So we have to close all the doors of the senses. In other words, you should be, and withdrawing all the senses from sense objects or pratyahara. Pratyahara means you should regulate. And fixing the mind on the heart. You should always meditate on the super soul. And fixing the prana on the top of the head. Gradually, the life air should move upwards. And taking shelter of me completely. Yoga dharanam. This is the process of Satchakra yoga. And even if you manage to follow this, what will be the destination? Vibrating the sacred syllable Om, if one thinks of me, Mam Anusmaran, and fits his body, he will certainly reach spiritual planets, Paramam Gatim. So he may reach spiritual planets. In other words, he may get out of these material planets, but still it is not guaranteed that he will attain Krishna's abode. So that is the problem with this. Now, how do we remember Krishna? By pure bhakti. If this is the result of Satchakra yoga, what is the result that one can attain by pure bhakti or remembering only Krishna? So this is possible. Attaining Krishna is easy for Kevala bhakti. If you do Ananya bhakti, Amala bhakti, Ananya bhakti, so then what is the Ananya Cheta Satatam? Ananya means without deviation. Cheta means mind. Satatam means constantly. Without deviation of mind to other processes or goals. Yo mam smarati nityashaha. He who smarati, remembers, mam, me, nityashaha, exclusively. Tasya aham sulabha partha. Aham means I, tas means for him, Shulabha, easy to obtain, O Partha. Nitya Yuktasya Yogina. Why he is able to attain the Lord? Nitya Yukta, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Here, yoga means devotional service. As we saw in the previous chapter, how the devotion is superior to other processes Krishna had explained. So without deviation of mind to other processes or goals, the devotee who always remembers me exclusively, for him I am very easy to obtain, O Partha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. As we will see in the later verses, who is determining the result of our thoughts, that will be explained, and then we can understand how this is possible. So what is the difference between bhakti versus other practitioners of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and hatha yoga? Although have some bhakti added, have their own self-interest. If you have some interest separate from the interest of a God who is our ever well-wisher, then, but a pure bhakti yogi is selfless and desireless, nothing but Krishna. He is fully convinced that if I do devotion, Krishna will fulfill all my desires. I don't have to ask him. And thus he is Nishkama. So Nishkama means our only desire is to please the Lord, and we are confident that Krishna will fulfill all my desires. Therefore, he can attain Krishna very easily. Sulabhaha. So this faith one should have. Now, further, there is no rebirth for the pure devotees. Mam upetya punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramangataha. Mam itya punarjanma. After attaining me, they never take birth again. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. What is the nature of this world? It is temporary, ashashvatam. Dukkhalayam, full of miseries. And napnuvanti means never return to this world. Mahatmanama, such a person is said to be a great soul. Samsiddhi means they have attained the highest goal. Paramam means highest. Samsiddhi means perfection. And having said that, there is no rebirth for one who has entered the eternal spiritual world. Krishna will now contrast it with the temporary material world where there is repeated birth and death. After attaining me, they never take birth again in this temporary world, which is full of miseries. Such great souls never return to this world, having attained the highest goal of personal service to me. In other words, they attain the highest satisfaction. Satisfaction comes through service, and that service is reposed in the Supreme Lord. So what if we don't go to the Lord's abode? So then Krishna has to explain this Yuga cycles, that we have this Kali Yuga, which is 4,32,000 years, and Dwapar Yuga, which is 8,64,000, Treta Yuga 12,96,000, and 17,28,000 is Satya Yuga. So all this put together is equal to one Divya Yuga, and thousands such Divya Yugas equal to one day of Brahma, and Brahma lives for 100 years of his lifetime. In that, there are many living species there which have a shorter lifespan, and so in one life of Brahma, these life forms appear and disappear. So there's a calculation shown here. Because of shortage of time, we have not discussed that. But basically, one important point is the 1 year of the human being is equal to 1 day of the demigods. That's why we do the Shraddha ceremony once in a year. So that calculation is shown here. So 360 human years is equal to 1 year into 30 days into 12 months. So that is one demigod year. 12,000 demigod years is equal to all the yugas put together. Now, this manifest and unmanifest states of this material world. Why is there this material worlds are manifesting, unmanifesting, and the life forms, different life forms? For example, some people say dinosaur has become extinct. No, it never becomes extinct. It will again reappear in some other universe. So this manifest and unmanifestation of the material world is happening because at the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest. And when the night falls, they become unmanifest again. So what I told initially, our life beginning and end is very relative. It depends on other living entities. There are some things which you cannot do if the other person is not there. Supposing you go in the night time and that person will say, no, I'm sorry, you have to come in the morning. So like that, there's an appointed time when all these living entities come together. In this way, the jivas appear and disappear again and again. Bhutva bhutva praliyate, as the days and nights of Brahma arrive. Superior to the unmanifest state of Brahma's night in this material world, there is another unmanifest nature, which is the eternal spiritual world. But this spiritual world is not affected by what changes are happening in this material world of manifestation and manifestation. So now Krishna talks about the eternal spiritual world and his abode. There is another unmanifest nature which is eternal, Sanatana, supreme, indestructible, transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. When all in this material world is annihilated, it remains as it is. Even if Brahma lifetime is ending, when all the living entities go into slumber, sleep, then also he is existing. Avyakta Avyaktokhara ityuktas tammahu paramam gatim yam prapya na nivartante taddama paramam mama. That which is described as unmanifest, which means it is not visible to us. It is there, it is manifest, but unmanifest to our vision. And infallible, indestructible, it can never be destroyed. And eternal and the supreme destination, that place from which having attained, one never returns. It means once we attain that state of consciousness, we will never come back to a lower state of consciousness. That is my supreme abode. Having described abode is supreme abode, Krishna will now describe the process of attaining that abode. So what is the way of attaining his abode? By Ananya Bhakti or pure devotion. In other words, devotion as directed by him. If you have to go to some person, he has to tell us the way. We cannot Purushasa Parapartha Bhaktya Labhyastvananyaya. Ananya means unalloyed. So Partha, the supreme person who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed and undeviating devotion. Bhaktya Labhyastva Ananyaya. Unalloyed and undeviating. Yasyantas Tani Bhutani. Everything is situated within, everything is dependent on him. Even if you don't want Krishna's abode, if you want to go somewhere also, for that also we have to depend on the Lord. So intelligent person thinks, why go somewhere else? Let me go to Krishna. Yena sarvam idam tatam. He is all pervading, although he is present in his abode. So just like the sun is situated in one place, but everything in the universe is depending on the heat and light which is separated from the sun. Similarly, he is all pervading, although he is present. He is one person, but he is able to control everything in this universe. Now, what is the supremacy of pure bhakti in attaining Krishna? Then Krishna talks about the different times of death, because every moment in our life is controlled by one particular person. So we will not understand this, but this is the fact that every moment of our life is controlled by one particular person. So I shall now explain the different times at which passing away from this world, the yogi does or does not return to this world. So every moment is crucial. So Krishna talks about the path of light. At an auspicious moment in the light and fire by the influence of sun god, fire god, during the day, the Shukla Paksha, fortnight of the waxing moon, in the Uttarayana, 6 months of the sun travels in the north of the northern solstice, that is from January to June or something like that. So what is the destination of such people? They attain Brahma Jyoti. They get liberation from the path of return, which means they go out of this 14 planetary systems. So it is very chance event. If you leave at that particular moment, because at that particular moment these people are there, this sun god, fire god, the deities who are presiding during the day, during the fire, and this waxing phase of the moon and the 6 months northern solstice, then you get one destination. And what if you leave your body in the path of darkness? That is in the Amavasya, in the night time. Smoke means when the fire is dull. And then when there is the waning stage of the moon, or in Dakshinayana, or in the southern solstice, then you take birth again, which means the soul moving from one body to another is dependent on some other living entities. And depending on which living entities are present at that time, they will take you to different destinations. Supposing if I want to go to the US, I have to board the flight which goes to the US. I cannot just board any flight. And there's a particular person who's in charge of the flight. Similarly, the soul movement from one body to another is dependent on higher entities, and they are regulated by time. So what is the path of the devotee? The devotee doesn't depend on either of this, because he is depending on for the pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear of returning to this world, whether he leaves the bodies at the auspicious or inauspicious moment by accident or arrangement. Because, for example, Parikshit was bitten by the snake, but that is not inauspicious because he was remembering Krishna. Being fully surrendered souls, they leave everything in Krishna's hands and easily go to the spiritual world. So Krishna is explaining that if you do the other processes, your future depends on others. But if you take to devotion, your future is in my hands. The path of devotees, although the devotees know these two paths, they are never bewildered. Therefore, be always fixed in devotion. Arjuna tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukto bhava Arjuna. So, what is the conclusion? The supreme position of Bhakti Yoga is explained in this last important verse. Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam atyeti tatsarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. By studying the Vedas, even if you get all the knowledge in this world, and you can perform all the sacrifices and undergo all the austerities and give all charity, because whatever pious results may be obtained, one can surpass all of them by knowing me and my glories. That is, which are talked in chapter 7 and 8. And performing devotional service. Such a devotee attains the supreme eternal abode. In other words, if you know about Krishna, you will like to serve him and attain him. Okay? The beauty of Krishna consciousness is that by one stroke, by engaging in devotional service, one can surpass all the rituals of the different orders of life. So thank you very much. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. प्रभु जी इस चैप्टर का तो नहीं है मेरा डाउट, वो पुराने चैप्टर का थोड़ा सा है, मैं पूछ लूं अभी.
Can you repeat, Mataji?
हाँ प्रभु जी, आई एम सेइंग इस चैप्टर का नहीं है डाउट, पिछले चैप्टर का पूछ लूं क्या अभी? शुड आई आस्क और नॉट?
ओके.
हाँ प्रभु जी, मुझे महातत्व और महाभूत में डिफरेंस बता दीजिए.
I explained that Mahabhuta means the 5 material elements. Earth, Bhumi, Apo, Analo, Ayu, Kam. Bhumi means
Okay.
earth. Apa means water. Anala means fire. Vayu means air. Kam means ether. So they exist in both the subtle and gross form. How do you know it is in the gross form? Earth has smell and taste, touch, form and sound. So like this, we have different qualities by which we can perceive these 5 material elements. These are known as the Mahabhuta. They exist in subtle, and when they combine, they produce the gross form of matter. But beyond this, there is the unmanifest form. Just like supposing you want to build a house, first you make a plan in your mind. Then you go and tell some person, this is what I'm thinking, can you draw accordingly? He makes a design. Then you accept the design, and then the engineer comes and then he executes that plan. Similarly, this Mahatattva is the unmanifest form of the 3 modes of material nature. The 3 modes are not manifest initially. Their unmanifest form is known as the Mahatattva. And then that by the will of the Lord, that becomes manifesting into these 24 elements. They become subtle. From the subtle, they become gross and gross. Gross means phenomenal existence, the world which you can perceive. The Mahatattva is the unmanifest form of the 3 modes of material nature. And the manifest form of the 3 modes of material nature are these 5 material elements.
Prabhuji, there are some categories also in Mahabhut and Mahatattva. Are there some types or kinds of Mahabhut and Mahatattva?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Mataji, Mahabhut is the पंचतत्व, पंच महाभूत बोलते हैं उसको.
नहीं, वो मुझे समझ आया माता जी. एक जीव भूत होता है, एक
वो अलग है.
ओके.
वो पंच महाभूत में नहीं होता है.
ओके, ठीक है माता जी.
Okay, there's a question from Malini Shankar.
Bhut basically means form. Bhut means form. So the Jiva Bhuta means Jiva has a form. Panchabhuta means they have forms. Some are gross form, subtle form. We say
The
Bhut
question
Maha.
is
Okay.
Ananya Bhakti or exclusive devotion to Krishna alone can deliver a person? What if a person has bhakti towards Krishna and other demigods too? Is it wrong? Will they not get liberated? This chapter is very inspiring and encouraging.
Yes. So as we saw, Krishna is saying very clearly, you have only two options. Either remember Krishna or remembering his other forms. Other forms means the demigods or all this. So if you remember someone else, then you are at the mercy of someone whom you are remembering. But if you are remembering Krishna, your future depends on Krishna. The Ananya Bhakti means exclusive devotion to Krishna. And then Krishna himself is bound to deliver you. That's the purpose of the Ras Leela, is to show that he reciprocates with each gopi. So he can Krishna is the only person who can reciprocate with each living entity. That's what he is inviting us to his abode, because even the cows, he can remember each of the cows' name and cow is responding to Krishna. So he performed this pastime to show that Krishna is the only person who can reciprocate with each living entity. Whereas the demigods, they delegate the responsibility to his devotee, like that it comes. So if a person does just devotion to Krishna as well as, of course, there's no wrong in worshipping other demigods, but if you worship them independent of Krishna, then it is a problem. Because there are demigods even in the spiritual world. There are different types of demigods. These demigods in the material world can be replaced. Today I can be a Brahma, then tomorrow I can be someone else. But the demigods in the spiritual world, they are serving the Lord in different capacities. So, yeah, we will not get liberated. That Krishna makes it very clear. If we worship these demigods independent of Krishna, then we will go only to the planets of these demigods, and that is also not so easy. But Sulabha Partha, Krishna is saying. Next question is, what is the difference between...
So the next question is, I will park the next Paro Prabhu's question. Kartik Prabhu's question is, what is the difference between Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, between elements of Bhakti and Bhakti Yoga, having elements of other yogas, renunciation for Krishna, etc.?
Yeah, so yoga is basically Bhakti Yoga only, but people come to the process through different means. One is Karma Yoga, where it's trying to come to Bhakti through action. And some person is coming to Bhakti through knowledge, Jnana. And some person is trying to get Bhakti through yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. But the problem is, in this process, if the person doesn't know that the goal is Bhakti, and that he can know that only with the association with the devotee, which is very rare, he will be satisfied with these other goals, like heavenly planets or liberation or these mystic powers. So that's why it's recommended to know the goal in the beginning itself. And that goal you can know when you know to Bhakti. So what is the difference between Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and the elements of Bhakti? So sometimes what happens, the Bhakti is the main element, that is pure devotion, only Bhakti. Of course, you can do these other things are also included, Karma, Jnana, and Ashtanga Yoga included in Bhakti, but in a more refined way. Another is the Mishra Bhakti. Mishra Bhakti means Bhakti mixed with Karma, Bhakti mixed with the desire for liberation, Jnana Mishra. Bhakti mixed with the desire for mystic power, that is Yoga Mishra Bhakti. But Bhakti is there, but it's mixed. One first category is pure devotion, where your only motive is to please Krishna, and Krishna also takes full responsibility for you. The next is Yoga Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Bhakti, where Bhakti is there, but it's mixed. Then Gunabhuti, that is the other one, is the Bhakti becomes secondary. The Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, you're doing little Bhakti, but your goal is only to get those other goals, not Bhakti. So renunciation for Krishna means actually doing devotion. So real renunciation is Ananya Bhakti. Otherwise, you will be forced to give up certain things against your will.
Okay, so the last question is Saurabh Prabhu. He's saying, though we are in campus, can we meet?
Yeah, probably the next semester. I don't know. We didn't expect that this semester also they will open, but since they have opened, we started the online course thinking that the semester may not function. College may not function during the semester, but it so happened that it has opened up. So let us see.
We will definitely meet in this semester itself, Prabhu. We are actually both, Prabhu and I are out of town. There are few of our students who are in the campus. You could connect with them, or once we get back, maybe we can plan a get together, because we also want to meet everyone. We are very, very eager to meet you. It will be very, very nice if we could meet up in person. We can plan something. We will tell you. It will take maybe a couple of weeks or so before we can actually meet. In the meantime, you can meet up. There is Mamta in the campus, Krishna Seva Prabhu. He's an assistant professor. He's in the campus. And Pankaj is there. Akshay is there. Dinkar is there. We have people in the campus. You could meet them.
Okay, so what we will do is we have Monday to Friday. We are having this elaborate discussion on this same chapter, both in English and Hindi. You can join us. And if any doubts are not clear, you can get it clarified.
Yes, Prabhu, we'll plan something. We'll plan we would like to meet up in person. So we'll try and plan something.
So next week we will be discussing 9th chapter, Rajavidya, the most important chapter and the most confidential knowledge. So we'll meet again next Saturday, 6:30. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Harish Prabhu, you can end the session.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah.